afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, gentlemen. No respect. Being in a kind of setting, as we call it in playwriting, we are in a setting, and being on the other side, there was always people coming to the prison to come talk and speak, and I was curious about who was going to come and what they were going to say that was going to help me grab a gem, just one jewel out of that conversation that day that I can go home with, or I can go back to my cell with and kind of meditate on that, just to hold on to it, because sometimes you can't gather it all, so you just grab one to grow on. Plant one seed, I'm good with that. So I'm just here for that. I'm here to show up. It's how I give back. One day I'll give back with money, now I'm giving back with my time, which is probably even more precious. And I'm excited about being here. I'm excited that they flew me out. And it means a lot to my people back home that I'm doing this kind of work, because it's not only you, it's cats like me who come out and feel like some of us are succeeding. And so I want to be here to help you answer some questions about what worked for me and the kind of choices I made that helped me move forward and not come back. Because the hardest part, as you know, is staying out. So hopefully we'll ask some questions and maybe some of the answers I have will help out. I hope so. All right, cool. So what Adolphus had asked, if I travel and I do speaking engagements and I talk to young people, what I try to do is do it all. See, I don't really, how I break the mold and how I break the stereotype of me just speaking to my kind of people is that I try to speak to all people. I teach in colleges. I teach in a college in New York. I teach a conservatory called Stella Adler. It helps me grow. At the same time, what I really love to do is teach and speak, in institutions. And just, for me, it's all about education. I could really I wish that I could step away from speaking to you, and I would rather be in the classroom teaching, like a class on poetry and the history of poetry. Because education to me is it's better than someone coming to speak to me where I can actually learn with that person. I can pick that person's brain for a better aesthetic on poetry, or let's say I want to learn a little about storytelling, me and you will learn about language, how language works with characters. That's the stuff I like to do, because that's what really allows people to grow and become well educated and use that so that now it's part of their skill. Like talking and speaking, it's just what I can do for now, but I would rather be in the classroom with you. What kept me going forward, right? When I was really down and out, I did a couple of bits. I didn't just do one, I did a couple. I was locked up in Ohio as well for transporting. I kept going back to the same neighborhood. That was the hardest part. Going back to the same influences. So I spent a lot of time reading in prison. I spent a lot of time learning about discipline. I spent a lot of time learning about that the world is bigger than the block, but I kept going back to the block. That was the hardest part. So what I decided to do was, there was one time that I never went back to the block. I just decided that I was going to make a left on that corner instead of going right to it. So I made a left. I was homeless. I had no home because my home was on the block. So I had to go live in the street. But no one knew I lived in the street. The people I worked for never knew that I had no home. It was none of their business. Their business was my work ethic. If I worked hard for them, that's all they needed to know. And I did a lot of years faking it till I made it. And you gotta fake it till you make it. You gotta keep making yourself believe in something that you're not right now, because eventually you'll end up there. So I faked that I was gonna be a performer. I faked that I was gonna be on Broadway. I faked that I was gonna be all these things. And on my way, as I was faking it, I was actually making it. That's really what it was. So all the new people I met, not the homies because I wasn't around the block anymore, the new people I met believed I was what I told them. I'm a performer, I'm an actor, and yet I didn't have enough acting jobs yet. I was going to school on the side and learning. But I was believing in it, and I kept believing in it, and I kept believing, I kept telling it, I kept saying it to myself. But I never told it to my friends because I wasn't on the block to tell it to my friends. So If my friend came up to me and said, yo, homie, I heard you were an actor, I would say, nah, I'm cool. Because I didn't want them to have an expectation of me. I was still learning. And that's the hardest part. I think the thing that I did was I didn't allow my friends to know my business, my new world that I came into. So whenever they found out a little bit, by the time they really found out, I was on TV, so that answered the question for them. You know? By the time my friends found out, I was on HBO. So I couldn't deny it because they were like, yo, I saw you last night on TV, right? So that's what I had to do. I had to go to a place and change without my friends around. You know, I still got love for them. I'm still with them to this day. I hang out with we go barbecue on Sundays. But during the week, I separate, you know. I separate myself, and I still read books because I'm still like trying to learn how to do every single job I'm doing better. I'm self-educated. I educated myself. I put myself through the certain college courses that I needed to beat my competition. That's all I did, right? So when I was going to an audition class, or when I was going to go out for a film as an actor, I seen that the guy that I was competing for the role went to Yale. So I went and I found out everything Yale students by just picking up the books. It's like, I don't want to pay for the teacher when I could just buy the book. So I bought the book and learned what my competition learned, except what my competition didn't know was street. You can't buy that or teach that. So when I walked in, you know, so I still do that to this day. You know, I'll do my competition with experience. You know, I do, like, my characters in my plays come from the world I come from. I just so happen to know the playwriting world, so I add both. You know, I go back and forth. You know, I do a little bit of dialogue that's really smart and intelligent for the audience to kind of stay with me, and I go right back to the gutter on them, you know? So that's how I balance it out. One of my poems about and how I was gonna make it look good so that people wanna buy it, right? So I created a marketing plan for myself as well. It's called Hustle, you know? You know, so that's what I did. You know, I rolled dice on a different corner. That's all I did, you know? Instead of picking up dice, I picked up the book and made the dice roll well. It's like, okay, I'm gonna take this book and make it look like this best-selling book cover. I took this person's flow, I took this person's style, and I made my own style. That's the same thing with books. I looked at great books. I saw a book called Angela's Ashes that we loved. The story of Frank McCourt, who wrote, you know, Teacher Man. And he had this great grainy black and white cover, but the letters, the title of the book shined. It was silver, so it was black and white with silver letters. So it had a good layout. I stole it. You know, took it, made my book look like that on the cover. Made the kid on the cover of the book look like he was from an ancient place in Rome. You know, so it's appealing to someone who walks by it and goes, oh, I'm gonna see this, and they open it up. And it's laid out like a real famous book I love by Willie Perdomo. You know, he wrote a really great poetry book, but the poems are laid out in the page really well, and the font is really nice. So I took that. Then I made the pages yellow. I didn't make them white pages, I made them yellow pages, so they look like an old book. So I paid attention to details. So that's what you do, you know, you pay attention to the great books that work and make it yours. And it wasn't something that I made up. I was reading all these self-help books, you know, and it was like helping me imagine myself to be somebody special in the world. And the more I kept imagining, the more I kept making the action. So what I did was I stopped eating with my elbows off the table, you know, because the people I looked up to ate with their elbows off the table. There was a certain way that they cut their food. I did the same thing, and I made habits like that. So every day I was making habits because I only had this one life. You know, it's only my own life. They don't make caskets in twin sizes, you know, it's just like, so I knew I was born alone, die alone, even if I had children, even if I had a mom, I was gonna make my fate by myself. So I owed it to myself to live that one life that was given to me. But I knew that it was gonna take some time. What helped me was not do it in front of people. It's like no one knew what I was doing. I was on the low with it. Like when I went to hang out with my friends, I was like my friends. But the second I left them, I was learning how to fix things that I felt the great people in the world were doing. You know, people I look up to, still to this day, I meet great people and I watch what they do. I watch how they cook certain foods and I take that and I steal it. Stealing again, you know, I was like, instead of stealing bad, you know, stealing and getting caught, it's stealing for my own self-benefit, right? So That's what helped me, but I became nobody's business because the hard part for me was doing it in front of my friends. Like if I was to tell my friend, yo, I want to change my life, I'm gonna be somebody, then he has a high expectation of me. And what happens with my homies is that they want me to do that overnight. I got no time. Change doesn't happen overnight. Just doesn't go down like that. It takes years. But if you take your time doing it, eventually you'll get there. And you know, I work in a world called art. Writing is an art. In the world of writing, if you're good, you're hired. Doesn't matter if you have a criminal record, because they don't discriminate. Art doesn't discriminate because they want the best. They don't care who you are. So I was lucky to find the market that didn't ask me for my criminal record, because in art they were like, just rock a stage. If that's all I got to do, cool. Let's rock. So I'm not gonna do. I'll watch me. It's been done in the movie, right? Deep down there is an old man river, blue denim flow. Martha's Vinny, a stepchild, rusty picket fence glow, desert sand to a black beach bringer, ghetto Shakespearean clown, little shopper horror fanatic, daydreaming of white girls from Skid Row with black eyes singing downtown, New Eurekan exile, frozen Japan kicks, SB stacked next to a collection of homies locked up, posing for Polaroid flicks, suffering from visions of grandeur, sucking the success out of pain, staring at dirty napkins, seeing the art in a coffee stain, cradle to the grave, distant coolness, red wine MO, 730 rudeness, Southside outlaw, flying cut sleeves, 80 blocks from Tiffany's on heavy rotated, YouTube bleeds blood, flooded with anti-social justice, sniffing gunpowder out of the barrel of a propaganda musket, immediate descendant of the cool, Vietnam draft, Boricua mixed with Lower East Side heroin resulted in the aftermath. I'm from the house that step and fetch it burnt down, lyricist lounge, poet laureate of the old hip-hop underground, son of the drama, child of the bard, an English soldier at Agincourt, either die or go hard, kill or be martyred, iambic pentameter on the regular so the gift goes farther, an Aristotle thug, dealing with the real, Plato is the enemy of the soul like a Def Jam deal. Yeah.